Trending down, back on the mic, episode 14. Well, we took a little hiatus there, but what can we say? We're back. We're ready to kill it. We're ready to crush the weekly grind. For everyone that's still here, you got myself, Ethersole, and Bender, and let's run it, baby.
We're back again. We're never leaving.
Never leaving, up only. I feel like the markets and the sentiment from community is that we got to push out an episode because it's been it's honestly just been a range for a while, but sentiment is at an all-time low.
Right. I think they're not getting like the upward movement they want occasionally to keep that morale high.
Yeah. The instant gratification of the crypto markets has been gone for quite some time. And so turning into a longer term mindset is just something that either takes, experience, practice, or just time to get used to.
Yeah. I think a lot of people from the NFT world are struggling with that. I saw it this morning. Someone said it's been easy in NFTs. You buy something, it just goes up immediately sometimes, but that isn't how it's historically been here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point because NFTs basically had their first cycle. And so they're in this holding period of, are we going to get another cycle? Where that question mark is like really, really there, as opposed to coins. The question comes up, but it's a question that's been asked numerous times and has been answered with a resounding yes.
Right.
It could be different, but I think we're both in the camp that there will be a return for both markets.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way there's not, in my opinion. I'm seeing the same sentiment I saw in 2018 or whenever it was.
Yep.
Of we're done. This is it. Pack it in, take your money off, and go live your life.
Yeah, it seems to be that's all anyone can talk about. We got to admit, it is tough to find a narrative to be short-term bullish on right now. I don't see where a bid all of a sudden comes in. Now, if we nuked to oblivion and had some V-shaped situation, maybe. But right now, it's just a waiting game, I feel like. And it's who can hold out until the time comes?
Yeah, so we've probably got, a year at least.
That's crazy to think about, is that a year is under the belt, right? Is that what you were saying?
No, well, a year is under the belt and what we've been seeing so far. But we have another year to go, probably.
I think realistically, you're probably right. The only thing I could see being maybe a factor is obviously there's a ton of global sort of uncertainty right now, just financial wise. And
right.
So there is this hey, the US comes in and helps backstop some of these other ally nations' currencies. And then that sort of kicks back on the printer type of deal. But that's a long shot because US, seems super, super focused on protecting the dollar and taking down inflation. So if that's their only goal and they continue on that path, yeah, I could see another year. But if they buckle and want to help, the rest of the world, then who knows? But
right.
That's the only real thing that I could see a quick pivot, quote unquote, which is the new hot button word.
There's a bunch of cool stuff in the works too. I think we saw that Coinbase and Google partnered yesterday.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And stuff like that in a bull market would have been huge news. But in a bear, it's just what does it do for me?
It gets swept under the rug, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that they read it and it's okay, cool. On to the next, as to where, like you said, in the bull market, we'd pump 20% off that. Google's all of a sudden in on it. But these are the rails that need to be built, whether it's bull or bear. And the fact that they are being built when it's when most would consider us at a despair type of attitude right now, has to be a good sign long term.
Oh yeah. It comes back to what we said in episode 3 or 4, talking about how, when you go and buy something on Instagram or on Amazon from your mobile phone, you don't see the back end of how this payment is processed. And Google's setting up the infrastructure to do that with crypto now.
Right.
Where you could be buying something through, a Google ad, and it'll take your crypto wallet and just process it through Coinbase's back end. And you never know you're using crypto. You just are suddenly doing it. It just makes it more fluid.
Exactly. And I mean, again, these things take so much time with these bigger companies. And
Right.
so like the fact that they just released it right now, they could have been working on this back when we were in a raging bull market. But
They were.
the fact that they didn't scrap the project, is like, okay, yeah, they don't, again. And also I think another point is that they don't spend these resources to build these type of products unless they do see a future.
Right. And I've been on the other side of that where I've been on the dev teams that are working on things that are unannounced, and they're either halfway done or maybe mostly at this point. Like things don't get announced until they know they're going to hit their deadlines and that they're going to be able to deliver this. Because all those companies care about is, their public image and their stock number. Right. So if you come out and say, hey, we're doing this, and then 8 months later you said, hey, we actually couldn't, and here's why, that's bad.
Right. Yeah. It's fail in silence, right? Like
exactly.
Let's scrap it in the back end. It didn't work. And like those, we both know in tech companies, that happens all the time too, right? And it's just these failures and it's like, okay, move on to the next thing. But for it to release and get a public release and all that stuff is a pretty big deal.
Oh, yeah. So I think that the moral of the story here for me is I still find bullish moments in the bear market and gives me hope for another cycle.
Yeah, I think we should touch on it later in the episode. The whole thing around hope, where it kind of gets memed, like hopium and stuff like this. Like, what do we even have to look forward to? But there is, you have to have a forward vision. Otherwise, what are you even doing here? Like, why are you here if it's all just like, oh, it's going to zero? Why would you waste your time?
Right.
We'll talk about like maybe burnout later in the episode and how to handle it and stuff like that. But I mean, who's going to be surviving when we catch a bid is like what I'm asking right now, because of all the hacks that have been happening.
Yeah. Yeah. The biggest one is the Binance hack, right? The $530 million hack.
Absolutely wild. Kind of saw it go down live on Twitter. Were you watching that, or did you catch like the back end?
I had notifications coming through for it, but I wasn't watching it live.
Yeah.
I saw CZ's tweets coming through.
Okay. Yeah. So they basically like 2 million BNB tokens got moved. And someone was like, put out this whole thread about how they're going net short BNB and going overall long on ETH. And I'm like, dude, this doesn't make sense. Like Binance themselves is shorting their own coin to go long ETH on every single like on-chain lending platform. That just doesn't make any sense. And then, it comes out where it's like the Tether gets blacklisted immediately. All these signs are pointing towards like a confirmed hack, but sheesh, $500+ million. It sounds like they maybe are going to get away with like 50 to 100 mil because they were able to halt the chain. And then you got to figure like how much of that are they able to cash out? I never really like understand these hacks. Like cashing out the money is so much harder than, I don't know, stealing cash from a bank.
Oh yeah, because it's all trackable. Like you're never really safe. I feel like
100%. That's when like at one point the government's gonna open their eyes and be like, wait, okay, every crime that's ever happened with crypto, we could fully track back to who did it. Like.
Yeah.
How many people out there are just like mobbing cash around and not reporting any of that? I mean, anyway, that's another subject. But yeah, Binance fully hacked and built-in insurance with the chain because they're able to just stop it.
Which is kind of cool at the same time because they just rolled it back, right? And kind of said, hey, that didn't happen.
I think they're still working on it. There's a whole technical thing that there was like a thread from Sam Zun, the crazy technical hack researcher that is super deep. It almost seemed like they were able to go back in time and like reproduce blocks basically and like create their own rewards. So I think the whole chain is like kind of stopped right now.
Gosh, I just couldn't imagine being in that person's position where you suddenly just heisted $500 million from the third largest chain?
Yeah.
Like, I would not be celebrating. I'd be like, oh, fuck, like, what have I done?
I know. I can't imagine that feeling. It almost seemed like they were shocked themselves because all the moves they were making post hack were manual. There was no like exit plan. They were just sending shit across like random bridges to Ethereum, to Arbitrum, to all these different networks, but like manually.
Yeah, it's almost like they weren't convinced it was going to work, and they're like, "Oh
Right.
no,
Right.
I didn't plan for this."
I mean, yeah, you come into 600 million, and then like, why would you not? If you're that in that boat, you know, a lot of times these companies won't. If you were to go and report the issue, like they'll be like, "Okay, cool, here's 500K." You know?
Yeah.
So in my head, it's like, okay, for sure. I see the camp of exploit the issue, take the cash, but then white hat with like, hey, can I get a 10% bounty? I mean, that is like sizable.
Oh yeah.
To kind of be like, hey, I have some leverage, but it still is risky because you kind of like perform this heist operation.
Yeah.
But you know, it's this like balance of, all right, companies need to be, you know, generous with their bounties. And then also like, why would you not? Like 50 million is plenty.
Oh dude. Yeah. That's like the net worth of Diplo.
Exactly. You could live a great life. I mean, even if you just love being in the basement and doing nothing, like you could have a dope computer and do nothing around.
In a really cool basement.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense to me. I really think what it is somebody, they've got the technical know-how and they figure it out and they're not convinced it works, or they are convinced it works. And then one of two things happens. It's either they panic because it worked and they're like, what do I do now? And they feel like they're in too deep.
Yep.
Or they've come from somewhere in life where that is just like money that is never attainable. And it's like kind of breaks a glass ceiling that maybe has been imposed by them or on them by society. And they're like, I'm not giving this back. Like this fixes everything, you know, me, my family, my friends, my community. And they're trying to be some sort of maybe hero with it.
Right.
They have some like grandiose idea of what's happening next.
I'm also thinking there's a camp of like this type of person who just does it for fun. Like it just does it to like see shit burn because they're so smart. They're able to, I mean, this is an assumption. Maybe they're so smart they're able to figure this out. They clearly know how to make money in crypto. And then they just kind of do this shit to be like, okay, let's see what happens. You know, I feel like if that was the case though, why wouldn't you just go crazy like and sweep the entire Bored Ape collection and all of a sudden own every Bored Ape?
Now that would be something I would do. That would be hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I'm going to perform a hostile takeover of the collection. This is now
like,
mine.
You go to Ape Fest 2023 and there's just no one because
just
no one
you.
owns a Bored Ape.
That's amazing.
Right? Like, I mean, that would be unreal to have like literally half the supply just locked up from some hacker.
And I wonder if that is part of it. If this is the second time crypto's been this big. The first time being 2017, but this time was even larger.
Yep.
And these kind of like dark side players on the internet have probably been around since early crypto, like where this was okay because you got away with it and no one looked into it. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're just complacent and saying like, I can do this again. It's fine. They'll never catch me. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've seen it. You have like maybe three camps of players of who this could be. One, like the go-to right now is North Korea. Mm-hmm. You know, people, oh, it's North Korea. They're hacking because I mean, I think that like literally is a thing. They just try and hack a bunch of DeFi protocols and fund whatever they have going on over there. Right.
Then you have inside jobs, which I think, as we've seen, I mean, just besides the BNB hack, the Binance chain hack, there's been a ton of DeFi protocols this week getting hacked left and right. And some of those, it's like, okay, cool. Like we're in the bear market. We have a bunch of TVL. Let me just, you know, I'm bored. Like, let me exploit my own protocol and be like, whoops. Like, you know,
right.
Kind of piece out with some funds, easy way to rug pull. But that's harder to confirm.
That's easier to pull off, harder to confirm.
Correct. Way easier to pull off, especially on the dev side. It's like, okay, I built this thing. Of course, I know how to exploit it.
Right. Let me just hit this withdraw function for a wallet real quick.
Exactly. And then like there's the whole narrative of, and I want your take on this. It's everyone talks about how these hacks scares off retail. And I mean, I guess before I say my point, like, what do you think about that?
It's dumb. Like, no offense, I was not going to listen to the rest of your question because I already had my opinion. It wasn't going to change.
Exactly.
Because,
no offense taken.
Yeah. Coinbase Oracle for Ethereum got hacked in 2016 or 2017 and it dropped the price to $1. We still made it to 2022. Target got their entire database breached and everyone's information got leaked. Target still exists. They hit record highs for sales in 2021. Like, these hacks have never scared off retail in any capacity in anywhere. Like, banks got robbed all the time long ago. Banks are still here today. Like, I just don't understand the logic there. I think it's fear mongering from the tech side of the world, being like, this is never going to be safe. Your coins are not safe. But there are guidelines and infrastructure you can put in place to protect them.
Right. I mean, I agree with 100% of what you're saying. That's the go-to thing people will say is like, oh, well, you know, that's going to hinder retail coming in. In my head, it's like, okay, who even knows about these hacks besides maybe the people listening to this podcast and like a couple thousand people on crypto Twitter right now? Because it's dead. Retail left a long time ago. One, they don't care about the hacks for the reasons you just said, like Wells Fargo, like all these companies just get, I mean, you had the Equifax thing, you know, like people's livelihoods are out there. Guess what? Next 2 days later, the news cycle is something else and they totally forget about it. So besides those facts, true retail, one, doesn't even know about the Fed, doesn't know about central banks, like is just now hearing the buzzword inflation, you know, like they're here to buy Doge and Ripple and Cardano and all these things that they get marketed to them when like money is totally flowing and we're back at all-time highs. To think that they care about these hacks is just like beyond redacted. Yeah.
They are not aware of how to look at Etherscan and figure out what their transaction ID is. Like, they're not the people that care about this stuff.
Right. In my head, it's like, there's an argument to be made for, okay, yeah, like self-custody of crypto is scary. We have to fix it. And like stopping these hacks or mitigating them in the long term is definitely something that needs to happen. But to think like every little DeFi hack is driving away adoption is like, yeah, beyond me.
It's stupid. Yeah. Well, adoption isn't going to happen the way we use crypto. Like, retail won't be using MetaMask and like on-chain dApps. They'll be using Fidelity and Vanguard and Coinbase. And, you know, those are not your coins technically, but they are protected because they're not your coins.
100% spot on. And that's exactly why they're not going to have to worry about these hacks. It's like they're going to have a third party FDIC type of setup where they can access, you know, some of these decentralized products through the big boys so that the big boys get their cuts. Like, they're not going away.
Exactly. And there's times when I am also retail. Like, Doge was pumping and I was like, well, fuck it, I'll buy some too. Like, I'm going on for this ride.
And if you're not, you're missing out. Like, if you don't think about the plays where it's like, okay, let me shut off the brain and think about what is a normie hearing and what are they being marketed? Like, hence why I've added Solana back to the DCA pile. Like, FTX is great at marketing. They're going to pump that coin eventually. And like, honestly, a ton of retail last cycle got into Solana and like knew about it. And it's going to be a familiar name when it comes back around. So Absolutely. It's like, all right, let me start buying some on the low and then boom, I sell. Like, that's my retail bucket though, you know? It's different than like my fundamental plays.
Right.
That you hope someday outpace the like turn off the brain type plays.
Right. I think the biggest way to look at too is that we don't care about it. A lot of the timeline doesn't care about it in the sense of like, it's this BNB hack or these DeFi hacks are going to stop you from dabbling in the market. And if it's not going to stop the hardcore users, it would never stop the people that are transitory that just come by to invest a little bit and leave.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point.
So I think it's all smoke and mirrors. Someone said on the timeline recently, and it was a great point. They said, why would you go after a $500 million hack when you can do a $3 million hack and no one will look at you again? And that kind of brings it full circle to the smaller DeFi hacks you were mentioning.
Right. I mean, so we kind of talked about this before the show, but are we a show, by the way? Or is this like, what is this?
Ooh, it could be a talk. Could be a talk show.
Kind of roll off the tongue, but it felt
it's like
nice.
A phone call with two people.
Exactly. A recorded phone call. One of those ones where it's like, hey, do you accept to be recorded this call for quality assurances? The Mango, this on Solana, speaking of fucking Solana, the Mango hack where, and I mean, I've seen so much back and forth, whether it's a hack or not, but do you know about that and like what happened?
I only know as much as I mentioned earlier, which is I know it happened, but I didn't follow it.
Okay. So maybe for those who aren't like, whatever, either way, here's a quick what happened. Mango is like a lending perp market, I want to say, on more like a lending protocol on Solana. And so basically they have their own token and you could like leverage it up to like 3-4x, I want to say. And so what someone did was took out loans against it and then manipulated the price on FTX and one other exchange, I want to say Alchemix. And then they were able to, so they pumped the price up. That allowed them to then borrow against their balance, which was way higher, right? They pumped it like 15x. And then they were able to borrow USDC, Solana, like all these premium assets. And then they closed their position, so it dumped back down, but then they didn't pay back the coins they borrowed. And so technically it was like a price manipulation, but could be construed as a hack. And then what they did was take over the governance and basically say, allow me to keep X percent, like close to 50% of what I took, in like, and then I'll give it back. And they voted with their own coins, and they almost are able to pass the governance protocol or the governance proposal themselves. But anyway, they got away with like 100 mil, and it's kind of like hanging in the balance right now. Now, here's the interesting part. This person's fully doxxed and we know who it is. And their entire purpose is to go around and exploit these small DeFi protocols for money. That's all they do. So this is like someone's job that we were just talking about.
Which is wild.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's almost like an economic exploit because technically this was all in the parameters of like the protocol itself. Mm-hmm. Apparently the team was warned about this like 6 months ago and they just did nothing. But, this is all like in the bounds, but it is price manipulation. So the legality there is like kind of murky, right? But clearly the dude's in the wrong. And the fact that he was able to like pull this off or like willing to pull this off while fully knowing who did it, like his full name's out there. He has a profile picture of himself and everything on Twitter. So like, kind of wild.
It's brash for sure. I wouldn't be the one doing it. Never.
No, so I guess the point of that was like, one, that's crazy. Two, there is a subset of people who like literally go around looking to just kind of like hack these smaller DeFi protocols and hope that nothing ever comes of it. And instead of pulling off these like 500, $200 million hacks where it's like all eyes are on you. Every single move you make is being watched. Some of these like smaller protocols, it's like, okay, well, no one really cared. And there's 500K gone, whatever.
Right. It kind of comes back to, like governance token votes are whale games. And this guy's kind of proving that by heisting the governance tokens and just doing what he wants with them.
Right. I mean, I think at the moment, it only takes like him to buy $1 million worth to pass the vote. He already had enough for like half of what he needed. So to buy the other half would only be like 1.5 million or something, which is like, okay, if you're talking about 100 million and gaining about 50% of that, quick math, 50 mil. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could easily do this, but I think now it's at this point where maybe he's like standing back. Everyone knows who he is. Let's see what happens and see how people vote, because now it's like pitting the protocol versus its users. It's like, okay, does the protocol give up half the money out of their own pocket to pay back the users, or like, you know, it's this crazy sort of standoff now. Or do we just get this guy?
That Wonderland was in. Wasn't Wonderland
Exactly.
in that spot? Burn the
Right.
treasury to pay back the users, and they decided to do neither?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been so many instances, man, where it's like, you know, these teams have all these user funds, and then user funds. I mean, we just had the one with Tribe and Faye, right? That whole hack of like, we know people personally affected who've been dealing with it for months. And it was like, they had more than enough money to pay these people back who got screwed, but they just didn't. And then it went to, you know, it got into legal messiness, and, you know, then they finally had to pay it back. But it's like, now the protocol shut down. They're on SEC radar. Like, it's like a whole thing. It's like, what do you want to, I don't know. It just is it's a messy, messy game for sure.
So what do we learn from this then? Like, what's like the everyday person's lesson they can take away from the Mango hack, BNB hack, and all this stuff?
I think one is, it's like, if someone in the community warns you like about a potential exploit, you should listen. That's probably the number one takeaway. Build protocols that can't be exploited. Slow down a little bit. But also too, I think another takeaway for maybe like the DeFi degen is pump the brakes, relax a little bit. All these hacks are happening. It's probably driving you crazy, but again, it's not going to affect whether DeFi gets like mainstream adoption in 5 to 10 years, because no one gives a shit.
Right.
And then 3, I think it's like, as a community, we should probably figure out a way to self-regulate so that the SEC, CFTC, you know, all these organizations don't come in and do it for us. Because these are just like, these are perfect situations where they're just licking their chops, being like, fuck yeah, people got screwed. We can come in and save the day, quote unquote, and protect everyone. And that's how like innovation just gets stifled.
Are you saying self-regulate in the sense of we create our own decentralized board that creates rules in a centralized manner?
I think we
have like centralized elections.
Oh my God, imagine. I think it's more like, you know, DeFi like health dashboards. There's plenty of those out there, but they got to get better. And then people like Zach XBT, you know, doing work where it's like chasing down, you know, certain like known hacker groups and stuff, and going and taking them to justice and stuff like that, where it's like, hey, we're doing our thing over here. We're regulating it. Like, you know, let us have some, obviously you have to put some regulations in place, but like, let us have some leeway for innovation.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, if I wish I knew the answer, you know, it's murky.
Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway is just not getting caught with your pants down. Yeah. I mean, that's like the general rule of life, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you've got 90% of your net worth or your portfolio in a single DeFi protocol, probably a little concerning if something goes bad there. Like, I think it's just telling me more and more to, you know, hedge my bets against the downside and just keep stables in the back pocket just in case. Spot
on. And I think the overall message that like now I'm thinking of is like just risk management. Basic risk management is fully lost in crypto. The best of the best usually have it, and that's why they are the best of the best, is because they're able to size their bets accordingly and limit their downside exposure to like these newer protocols. So,
and it's easy to get caught up in that though. Like, I did it a week ago when GMX went from like 38 to 62 12 hours after I bought it, and I was like, okay, if I had just put in a ton of money.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's always that game. You hit a winner and it's like, why didn't I do more? You hit a loser and you never think like, oh, I'm glad I didn't do more.
Right.
It's this whole mindset of just, it kind of gets mixed in with greed, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's like, damn, I should have put more. And then on the next play, you're risking more on something you're not as confident in, and it backfires.
And yeah, and it's easy to get caught up there. It's super easy.
Yeah.
Because 1 ETH gain, you're like, if I just put in 5 ETH, that would have been a, 3 ETH gain.
And think about it. How much are you like, you see these flexing P&Ls on Twitter where people make 500K, 3 million, 7 million. Like, in a couple days on these plays. And it's like, you all of a sudden, even if you made a couple grand, which is like, that's great in a couple days, you don't feel that. You're all of a sudden like, oh dude, what? Like I can't even be happy about my shit because it's pennies.
Yeah. So, yeah. Think about how many gains you've watched wipe away because you're like, I'm going to wait for a little bit more.
Oh my God, dude. I mean, that's called put me on the round trip express because I literally live there.
Yeah. It's crazy.
You watch it get wiped out because you're like, no, dude, this is the one that's going to like $1 trillion or whatever.
Right. And everyone said it. Everyone's seen like a profit line that they're happy with, and they're like, okay, if we just go up a little bit more from here, I get this much. That feels even better. And they watch it go down back to where they started.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a common tale, especially in crypto. In I would say it applies to all financial markets. Everyone just, is always trying to squeak out that grand slam, even if they have a home run sitting right in front of them.
Yeah, and I've always been a big fan of like, you don't win games by hitting home runs. You win games by hitting singles.
Yeah, and it's not as fun, but it's how it gets done.
Right. I mean, look at it this way: you make $300 a day. It's about $2,000 a week, ends up being $240,000 a year.
Right. It's
plenty of money.
100%. You can't lose sight of the compounding game.
No.
Where it's like just stack these little wins and it pays a ton over the course of a long time frame.
Yeah. There's just so much to be said for having dry powder too in the chamber, because like dry powder being stable coins or just liquidity, because there are moments when you see something and with every being in your body that thing is going to go up.
Yep.
And we've all been there and been like, okay, this is it. We're doing this.
It happens all the time. I mean, you go to work. This is work, right? Like crypto markets, they're work, and you don't have tools, which are stables or ETH. Like, how are you gonna go to work with no tools? You have to have some sort of dry powder or something, like to capitalize on those moves. And you have to be patient. That's the thing. It's like every day looking for a play. You could look for it, but taking the play is where you go wrong.
Right. That's what I was telling my buddy. I was with some friends over the weekend, and one of them listens to this, and he's one of like 3 people that I know in real life from before all this crypto stuff started that's actually into crypto. And he was like, how much of this stuff is real? Like, how much of these like profit lines people make and stuff they post on Twitter is real? And I was like, man, probably like 10% of it. Like, people are changing numbers, they're editing things, they're making it look fake. Like, the biggest thing you want to do is just take your winners and be patient.
Yep. I agree. I mean, anyone can flex anything and edit. It's so easy to edit things nowadays and make it look like you're this hot shot that's making a ton of money.
Dude, I sent a tweet a while ago as like a meme that had like 3 million ETH in a MetaMask wallet because I just changed the CSS to get myself a bunch of money. And like, I didn't even do the math.
Yo, send me that. So, like, your DMs are getting blown up. It's like, yo, hit me with that.
Oh yeah, it was funny. But the funny part is like, you look close enough, it's like, 3 million ETH is like, I don't know, a ton of money. And then the actual USD value is like $800 or something. Like, I didn't do all the math there.
Oh yeah. Okay. I got you.
It's just too easy to fake everything these days.
Agreed.
You got to be real careful.
You got to be careful. And then you got to think about why they're faking it. They're running a paid group. They're running, a signals thing. Like, watch my YouTube, my podcast, whatever it is. Like, there's some sort of financial gain there to fake it till you make it, take roids. I mean, it's in every single thing these days. Cheating is the quick way to financial success or whatever it may be, fame, power. But
you're the one that grounded me one time. I sent you some guy's P&L screenshot of him making like $17 million. And I think I asked you, I was like, I'm understanding this correctly, right? Where this guy probably wagered like 100 million to get this P&L. And you essentially told me like, yeah, like, he's not sending pennies out there to get these P&Ls. Like, he's putting a lot up at risk. Yeah.
Like, it's basically like a perspective thing of like so say your portfolio is like, say you only have $1,000 to work with. He's basically putting out like $10 of your $1,000 portfolio because he's just that size, right? He's not leveraging up on 5 million 100x because that is just crazy. It's like,
Right.
okay, he's obviously getting to that size is because you have risk management. And so,
Right.
you're not going crazy.
And one of the most fun things for me to do right now is finding not like a DeFi protocol, but just kind of anything. And like, it's GMX for me right now. Like, just to see something compound and go up is fun.
Oh yeah. I mean, right now is the time to farm. Like if you and by farm, I mean like, go into these DeFi protocols and collect tokens, however it works. But like now is the time where it's, maybe that APR says it's 50 to 100 APR and you're like, oh, that's whatever. Like that's sick in the long term. But if it's these like coins that fluctuate, it's kind of like, it's not worth the risk. But right now, say that coin goes 50x when the bid returns. I mean, that APR turns into, 50,000 or whatever it is. But you get my point.
Right. And it just gives you something to do. It gives you that dopamine hit that is not going to hurt you. And what I mean by that is everyone loves sending transactions. It feels good to spend money. It's why retail therapy exists. It's why we like buying things as people. But you get that same hit by going somewhere and saying, like compound or, farm or yield or like acquire your gains. But you're not actually spending money there. You're just getting the same dopamine hit and you're saving money.
Right.
And that's what got me through so much of like the bullshit we went through in the past few years was going through these random protocols and just hitting that compound button or hitting that yield button. And I might be working with like $500 on Phantom or Cosmos or something, but it felt the same as spending like 5 ETH on an NFT.
Right, exactly.
You have to trick yourself sometimes to make it feel like you're doing things, even though you're really just, you're keeping yourself busy, you're learning, you're spending time instead of money.
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought one of the coolest like exercises is going and finding a super small low cap and then maybe scaling into that and then seeing how like, and then getting a large percent of the supply and seeing how liquidity works and like how these big whales are, how they have to play the game on some of these protocols because they can't just enter and exit all in one transaction. That's just not how it works. They have to layer their bids. They have to, scale in, scale out, and learning those dynamics helps you like plan profit taking points when the bid returns.
Absolutely. There was one like that recently that I remember we talked about doing that very same thing. And you said it took you, a month to scale into like a medium position.
That's the best. I love when that happens because, and like people are talking about, I think we're in a Discord and someone was complaining about there's lack of liquidity in the markets right now. And I'm like, bruh, that is literally the bread and butter of when you make money because you can just scale into these small projects that you have done the research. Okay. That's very important. And you think it's going to do well in the long term. Some don't, let's be real, but then you scale in over time without spiking the order books or the price. And all of a sudden you have like 5% of the supply and you're like, okay, that's my long-term bet. And then it pays off and you're like, holy shit. Like those are the grand slams.
Oh yeah.
But the person who's waiting for that liquidity sitting here like complaining like, fucking bear market, no liquidity. It's like, dude, okay, you're just missing out and you don't see the opportunity sitting right in front of you.
Right.
So.
I've been on the other side of that liquidity game where...
Oh yeah, you can't exit. So like, be careful.
Oh, no. I could exit, but my friend exited first and sent me a picture of the chart. And he was like, I think this is the largest red candle I've ever personally printed.
Oh my God.
And I responded and I was like, I'm still in.
Yeah, like, hey man, at least give me a heads up. It's like, yeah. Also, maybe if you're gonna do these games, like, don't tell your buddies.
Yeah, otherwise you're just dumping on them. And I sat there and was like, this feels fine. This is good. Good for you, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny.
It is, and that's kind of the fun that we have here, I suppose.
Right. I mean, it's just market dynamics, right? Learning about liquidity and how it flows, and then you can apply that to the larger coins. If you see someone, all of a sudden you're watching the order books on chain, and you see someone selling like 5,000. Let's just take GMX. You see someone selling 5,000 GMX over and over and over, and you're like, what's going on here? It's probably a whale scaling out. Maybe you should look at their wallet and see, their history. And if they bought low and bought, if they have a history of buying low, selling high, maybe it's a sell signal, like these are things that you need to pick up and put in your toolkit.
That's exactly what happened with Luna, right? Swapping into Bitcoin.
Yep.
Is everyone was watching their wallet and be like, they have this much more money that they're planning on putting in over time. Like, we're going up.
It's called front running. Like, you literally just popped in front of it, and everyone was bidding the market because they knew it had a couple billion to spend. And it was an easy win. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't get those all the time, but being able to spot them and just, So there's exercises that can be done right now.
There were so many times about that. I think we watched one with the Curve Wars where people were scaling into Curve, and we watched their wallet. And we're like, all right, they've got $3 million more to go. Like, I'm going to buy now.
God, I missed the bull run, man. People were so ridiculous with their cash and just having like you'd see someone buying into a coin and they're buying in $1 million clips. And you're like, okay, they just bought $1 million. They have 10 more. Like, I'm going to buy right now. And then when they're at 9 million spent, I'm going to literally sell it all.
Absolutely.
So
those times will be back. I have no fear.
They will, dude. I mean, when you I think I said it on Twitter, but it's like when Portnoy, the Barstool guys, all hop back on, get off the sports betting wagon and hop back on stonks because they're just going straight up and saying stocks are going up only. Then it's like, okay, maybe we should start scaling out. Like, that'll be the tell. It'll be back. It'll be back for sure.
Yeah. If it doesn't come back, I'd be shocked. It's come back so many times. It's not going to disappear now that it has so much more recognition.
I mean, if it doesn't come back, it's basically like the world just never has innovation, and I mean, basically the world ends. Like, I'm not saying financials are like the end all be all, but for it to not ever come back, I don't know. I just don't see where that's possible, especially on like if you're talking. Okay, maybe there's a scenario where it takes 10 years to come back, and that is like a scary thought, which is a possibility. But talking about like reality, it's probably going to be, like you said, another year, maybe 2, whatever it takes, but hone your skills in the meantime.
Yeah. And if this becomes like we mentioned that there's been some theories about North Korea trying to hack DeFi protocols to fund their own initiatives. If crypto becomes like the geopolitical war ground for economic like battles, that's fine. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like there's a lot more attention there, a lot more money being pulled in and out. Like, I'm along for the ride at that point.
Yeah, count me in for that.
Sounds like good things to me.
Which like maybe jumping over to NFTs, where do NFTs find a role in that? Because there's been a little heat on them boys recently.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, NFTs had their first cycle. And no one knows what's going on. No one knows where their future lies, but everyone thinks there's possibilities there.
Yep.
I mean, the biggest thing is like right now is the Yuga SEC cycle.
Pretty surprising, but actually, okay, I take that back. Not surprising about it being about ApeCoin, but was surprising that I read all the documents, or I had someone else read them and I looked at her tweet. Anyway, and I saw that they included the actual assets themselves. So is that maybe just the other side deeds, or is it actually apes? Because that is a situ.
From my understanding, it was other side deeds. The focal point is on the deeds, and it's the Orange Grove, the Howey versus SEC Orange Grove issue. Where other side did exactly what Howey did. I forget this guy's first name, and I'm going to look it up. Where he sold pieces of his Orange Grove and essentially said, I'm selling this to you to fund development of the Orange Grove, and this Orange Grove will become something, so your land will be worth something. It's exactly what other side did. They said, hey, I'm going to sell you this digital land, which is worth, in theory, nothing, but we're going to build this big world on it, so it will be worth something. And that is the exact same thing of the SEC versus Howey case that developed the Howey test. William John Howey.
Got it. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. And also about ApeCoin, though, right? Like itself?
Yeah, well, ApeCoin is the perceived speculative possible value that was used to make or to purchase the land plots. So it's all tied together. But it's almost like Yuga Labs looked at the Howey test and was like, you know what we can do? We can do this. We can do the exact same thing that the SEC fought against in 1940 something and won. Let's just do that one more time in 2022.
Oh my God. So we're thinking, are you in the camp that they might lose this case? I mean, let's be honest, this is going to go on forever regardless, but, or is this going to be like, let's drag it on and then settle type of deal?
I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be. And I know you know that. I think it's going to be Ripple 2.0. It'll, Ripple, the cases came out in probably 18, somewhere around there. And it's still like everyone knows that Ripple has won that case, but it's not been like finalized and announced. But it's been 4 years. Like I don't see this going anywhere anytime soon. And I do think it's probably a settle quietly thing, unless the SEC looks to make an example out of them and really drive home like we're not going to allow this sort of thing. And in that case, I couldn't see a settlement. I could see more of a hard and fast ruling.
Yeah, I agree on those points, and it is a big deal for NFTs. Like obviously they're going after the top dog here to prove a point, and Yuga's not stupid. I know that they delayed the coin and most of this stuff to like figure out their legal shit, and so they have massive VC money. They have tons of resources. And so if they wanted to fight, they easily could. But yeah, it's going to set a precedent for the rest of these NFT projects that have not been doing their due diligence.
Right. I talked to someone this morning about it actually and just said, hey, where are the grounds here? Where's the lines? What are NFTs allowed to do and what are they not allowed to do? And it's a lot more clear than I think the timeline thinks it is. And I'm not going to get into the legal aspect there because I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to be the downfall of someone's success and be like, hey, I heard Bender say this on Trending Down.
I got my legal advice from Trending Down, so go talk to them.
Yeah.
Or get subpoenaed.
Yeah, it's not as bad as it kind of looks from the timeline. The interesting part is Elio Trades, the guy that runs Imposters, and he had a hand in Neo Tokyo.
Yep.
He came out yesterday and said, hey, like I've talked to my lawyers, and they are the same lawyers that I think Fenwick
and West, yep.
Yeah. They're like, they seem confident that this is kind of a nothing situation and it's more of a posturing.
I mean, they better. They're the ones that advise all these top NFT projects.
Yeah. And I can't imagine a major legal office going into this and saying, hey, this is illegal and you're going to get dinged for this. So let's do it. I just can't see that happening.
Yeah. I mean, again, it'll be interesting. I do think like the baseline of just selling NFTs and like, like stripping coins and everything else. And then just like the baseline of selling art basically is totally kosher. But when you start bringing in utility is when it gets a little murky. And so I'm excited to see, I wish the resolution wasn't going to take fucking 5 years, but
me too.
It is what it is, and innovation always outpaces these regulations, and so it's just going to be more of, okay, we'll keep playing the wild west until we get a ruling or something else happens.
It's escape of velocity, right? Like the space moves so fast, and the government moves so slow that it'll just keep getting outpaced every time, and I can't see it ever getting locked down.
No,
in innovation-wise, unless there's some blanket ruling of like, you cannot do anything unless it's within these guidelines.
Yeah, and that's always like the one thing they won't do is because like, they don't want to upset a subset of voters. They don't want to do this. Like there's so many reasons why like they leave gray areas.
Right. I do think there are a lot of NFTs out there right now though that have failed to do their due diligence and
absolutely.
Like have a short lifespan.
Yeah.
If someone chooses to bring legal action to them, and I just wouldn't want to be on the end of that lawsuit.
No, that doesn't sound fun. I mean, shit. Speaking of lawsuits and the NFT community and roasting, I'm very excited to bring this next subject up because I know there's going to be some passion behind it. And are you ready?
No, but I know where it's going.
I think we should hop into Utes.
Yeah.
and Frank and all that's going on. So this is for people who may not be aware. I guess I'll set it up with that. We've talked about this a little bit before. We were very lenient actually on this before. We kind of wanted to let things play out, and they played out almost exactly like you're a Nostradamus over here, calling how it was going to play out back then when everyone on the timeline was just obsessed and basically bowing down.
Yeah.
But anyway, Utes, this huge Solana NFT project, had hype, and still have yet to reveal the art, and it's looking worse by the day. So I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, super loaded topic here. Yeah, I mean, like, I've been getting a lot of messages today and last night of like, man, you must be so happy to be right about what you were saying. And like, no, like, it sucks. I hate being right about this kind of stuff 'cause it means so many people lost along the way. But yeah, like the Utes artist quits and there's no art to be revealed. Like, this is the scenario you never want to find yourself in, especially after toting that this is the best art the blockchain's ever seen when there was no art. And now you're kind of up shit's creek with no paddle because you probably have partially finished art. The artist is gone for reasons that are very opaque and unclear, and you need to now match the style with a new artist to fix everything and to either add traits or finish the concept entirely. Like, you're in a shitty spot, and I don't feel bad for them. You know, you were not prepared for the launch. You didn't do it right. It seemed like greed got in the way and execution went out the door. And this is the spot they found themselves in. I feel bad for the people that bought them and held on.
I want to reiterate that you literally called this from day one. And then also the fact that just because you call it doesn't mean you're now gloating. It's just that, hey, this is how it looked, and I happen to be right. That doesn't mean I'm like rooting for them to fail. If anything, it's like probably the opposite. Like, I hope they prove me wrong, but I want to warn people that this could happen. And so I think that, like, that's already known, I believe, but I just want to get that out there again. But oh my God, dude. It's just delays after delays. And then the artists quit, which I didn't even know about till you brought up to me. That is, I mean, I can only assume how bad of a situation that is because, again, how can you just mimic someone else's art? That basically is like tracing, you know?
Right.
As a kid, like, hey, I drew this. You're like, did you trace it? Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like, and all the hype that went into it, it sounded like it was ready to reveal. So the fact that we're in this place is wild. But then the reason that it's like easy to not feel bad is because Frank put himself in the main character. Like,
yeah,
he wanted all the smoke, and now he's getting all the fucking smoke.
Right. He plays the victim really well, and he plays the hype man even better.
Oh yeah.
Where when something goes wrong, he kind of shies up and gets coy and says, you know, we'll do better. This is on me. It's my fault. But when he has momentum behind him, he's like, fuck this and fuck that, and I'm out here to set up dunks, and I'm here to dunk on you, and look at these receipts from last time when no one trusted in D-Gods. But you're just, he's shifting back and forth just against the momentum, and essentially, almost like he's doing like PR control constantly.
And the engagement this guy gets is unbelievable, and it's like, to me, it's like, is that part of it?
Yeah, it is. That's his job. That's what he brings to D-Gods and Utes. Is he's not a technical guy. I don't really think he knows what he's doing under the hood. I think he just knows how to work social media well.
Yeah.
And if that's all you bring to a project, that's fine. But that's not what you really want in a leader.
Right. You can have that as a hype man, but the hype man's never the guy on the mic.
No, and like, he should never be the guy on the mic. Just, you know, someone asked me yesterday, how did you know this was coming? And I was like, there was not a single time I heard him speak where I thought he had things figured out.
Right.
He just did not give me, like, feelings of confidence in what was happening.
You got Do Kwon vibes of, oh, it's opaque. You know, let me tell you how opaque this thing is, by telling you how opaque it is.
Yeah,
You know?
immediately, man. It's wild. Like first at the beginning, I was like, he's just hyped. He's like, he's playing main characters. It's fine. But over time, I was just like, God, this looks bad. Looks worse and worse.
Yeah.
And since I finally told him, like, look, you're like Do Kwon Light to me, it's been downhill.
Again, dude, anytime you become the main character, and I feel like the only person that has somewhat escaped this is like CZ and maybe like Kobe. But
Yeah.
like anytime you call on, and they've probably gone through their own stuff, but anytime you call on people and start shouting it out, something always happens in this space. So
Yeah, it's too malleable. It's too unregulated. It's too risky to come out here and say things will go perfect. This shit's going to be great, because it never is going to go that way.
yeah, I'm here to make all you guys money. Like saying that type of stuff is so cringe to me.
That's actually one of the things I was told you can never say about an NFT. Like that puts you in breach right away.
I mean, like that is 101 when talking about anything. Like if you have a public platform and you're going to talk about making people money, you might as well slap handcuffs on yourself.
Right.
Right? Like, okay, yeah, you toss out the disclaimer, not financial advice. By the way, this whole podcast is not financial advice. But like, you know what I mean? If you're going to tell people, hey, follow me, buy my own produced thing, and I'm going to make you money, you're literally begging to either like mess up and disappoint a whole bunch of people, or, I guess even worse, get in regulatory trouble.
Right.
So,
and like his guiding light, or shining light more so, is that he always says, I'm not going to give up, which is like rare for the crypto community, where usually when someone says, hey, my project is not doing well, let's try again later and restart something new, he sticks with it and says, how do I make this better? That's his shining light. But he can't get past his ability to not shut the fuck up, stay off Twitter, and just do the work. Like,
I hate to say it, but that's such a low bar, which is crazy for our industry to be like, oh, I won't quit. It's like, no shit. Yeah. You shouldn't quit.
Yeah, like I've worked jobs my whole life. I came to work every day and I was like, I'm not going to quit. I don't like fucking being here, but I'm not going to quit.
Right. But
like,
it's such a low level, like low baseline. But you're right. It's crazy how that is, I guess, like glorified and like looked at in a positive light, where it's like that should be standard.
Right. But like what kills me is that he says like every day I'm working hard. I'm out here like trying to make, finish the project, get it revealed. We're doing big things. Like, bro, you were on Twitter 12 hours a day. Like, what is going on? Right. That's what killed me, is the day the artist announced he was leaving, my man just like doing spaces and like partying in spaces, essentially. I'm like, if this was me and my project, like I'd be in shambles, like scrambling of how do I do damage control? How do I fix this?
How do I write this wrong?
Right.
Like you're preaching on Twitter that you're going to make everyone right and whole and stuff. And, what are you doing? Like,
it blows my mind. But yeah, it always comes down to don't be the main character. Like you said, Kobe got through it and came out on the other side as like the messiah of crypto.
Right.
And the odds of that are so small, and you have to be brilliant like Kobe. And I just don't see that in anyone else.
Yeah. I don't see it. You see even CZ Binance taking heat all the time. You got SBF, I feel like, who's now a main character, and he takes tons of heat. It's just not where you want to be, especially as like an up and coming project that hasn't really proven itself. You don't see Yuga guys out here asking for all the smoke on Twitter. If anything, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, they take the silent approach, which has worked well for them. Yeah. And I think a lot of Utes' downfall and the DeGods team downfall is that they keep putting timelines on shit that they don't understand how to meet.
Right.
And, this guy tried to tell me how timelines worked, and I was like, that's not actually how planning for things work. And that was like the biggest red flag, was you really don't know what you're doing behind the scenes, do you?
Yeah. It's like, okay, so you've never managed a project or, had any sort of experience with like actually meeting a deadline before, have you? That involves more than like two people.
Right. And so it's, there's an article out there where the Utes team posted the days to reveal for all these ETH-based projects, and
oh my God.
And they said they wouldn't take that long, and I'm not keeping track of it, but I I am afraid of what happens when they start to encroach on those days and surpass them, because they've given themselves another timeline suddenly,
Wow.
of a standard of, hey, we are going to not take this long, but they've found themselves in a scenario where they might. And that's kind of where it all boils down to for me, was like, you got to put your ego aside. You can't just pretend you are this messiah and I can do no wrong, because you can't control all the factors. You can't control that your artist is going to bounce because he's unhappy.
Right. It's almost like the popularity contest got to him, and you just like wanted to put out this sick project, which it was like, I'm going back to like the tweets leading up to the Utes launch, or like at least the Tubes launch, which is like the unrevealed art. And like how you could be that confident in that, like hyping it up when you had to have known full well that the art wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Because it's been this long. There's no way it was like, okay, shit, a couple layers of the NFT aren't fitting right. We can fix that in like a couple weeks, right? But it's been what, months now?
It's been over 30 days. I haven't done the math, and I don't really want to.
No, not worth it. But
wild, right? Like it
that's crazy, man.
and they had a reveal date set. Like it was very clear, and he said himself that they had 15,000 Utes to reveal, but they decided not to because they wanted to fix things. Now, this differs from a different narrative that came out first, which is the technical side of it wasn't quite ready because there's so many things that are moving behind the scenes. So the goalposts have moved a little bit, and originally it was, there is this technical piece we're trying to iron out because it's so long and it's new and no one's done this before, to, well, we need to fix the art. And it's kind of like, which one is it? Right.
It's crazy to see an NFT project go through this, because with DeFi and stuff like that, it's like, okay, yeah, like, for Luna, for example, like, oh yeah, no, the peg will come back. Like it's pegged to $1, it'll come back. Like we have a rescue plan, and you can sit there and watch it. Basically, it's something where they almost can't even control. But this, it's like, it is fully in your control, pal.
Yeah.
Like you just had to make the art or just delay the launch and be like, hey, it's not ready. We're going to delay the launch for a month so we can reveal with it on the timeline that we want. And there's no external factors here. It's all internal management that clearly was mismanaged.
Yeah.
And the thing that I hate though is that like you try and call something like this out on the timeline and it's an immediate like, oh wow, I pray for you. I can't believe you would even talk about that on the timeline. Like people are gonna roast you, and it's like that's not how the space should be. You should be able to call out something that's not right. And,
dude, I got death threats because I said that Frank was being egotistic. Oh yeah, I got death threats in my DMs. I had people like threatening like what I was trying to build. Like, wait till you launch something winky face. Like.
That's pretty disgusting, to be honest.
Yeah, I turned away from the entire community. I was like, this whole community sucks. Like, I don't need to be a part of that. Like, you can take your shit back.
Yeah, that's not where we want to be. So, don't contribute to that. I know no one on listening to us is doing that, but that's disgusting.
Yeah, like there's nothing healthy about saying I'm going to retaliate in a violent manner or like a eye for an eye matter. That's not how things work.
And let's like also make this point clear of we're talking about this and criticizing it in a fair way. We're not saying anything that's made up or lies. And we actually waited on this. I wanted to bring it up way earlier. And it was like, all right, let's at least give them a chance to do anything. And it just never happened. So now it's like, okay, and we're not sitting here having a dunk fest. It's literally just, wow, I cannot believe this played out like basically you called it, but like it did, and it's still there. Like that's the fact of the matter.
Right. The first time we talked about this was in August.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's been 2 months since this has been brought up publicly now, that I've been like sitting on these feelings of I think this is what's going to happen.
I mean, Nostradamus. Nostrabender.
Nostrabender.
That might be the title of the episode, but then people might not get it.
Yeah, probably not until they get about an hour in.
Yeah, exactly.
The golden silver lining there, not the golden lining, is you still you should be up, I believe, from how much you would have spent to mint the Ute to selling it today.
Which is crazy.
Yeah, which is crazy and great.
Yeah.
That's a nice side is the people that minted or were able to mint are still pretty risk averse if they want to hold on, or I think they're probably close to breaking even now. It's bad for the people that bought in after.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good. I mean, it is what it is. They have a huge following. I'm sure we'll get to see the art one day. Who knows when? Maybe it's cool. Maybe it's a great project. And again, this is early days to all this stuff. So do they have time to fix it? Yeah, of course. But maybe tone down the arrogance.
Yeah, and that was the biggest red flag for me, man, was, I saw a tweet where he came out heavy, and since he has this crazy following and engagement, because he's a founder of a project, people jump on every tweet he has.
Of course.
So he can ratio everyone and anyone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, same with Dokwon. It was the same exact thing. People called him
Dokwon
out.
Can do it. Exactly.
Your size is not size. Like, how many quotes did we get from that guy that just turned out to be like, are you kidding me type material?
Right. And that engagement that follows you gets to your head. And I saw it one time and was just like, this is it. Like, this response makes zero sense. And here's exactly why. And his response to me was, why don't we hop on a Spaces and talk about it? And I did it. But the notion of why don't we hop on a Spaces and talk about it is
growing
indicative. No. It was indicative of what I was saying of this was all about your ego at this point, because this should never have been a Spaces conversation. This was a private conversation, but you want to do it publicly.
Exactly.
Like, it boiled back down to exactly what I thought it was. And the nice part there was a bunch of people were DMing me from both sides, the ETH side and the DGOD side, saying like, thank you for like actually calling this out and like holding somebody to the things you're asking finally. Yeah.
And it also, the silent majority is always the majority. The loud few on Twitter are always the few. I mean, but they're the loudest. So that's the most annoying.
Right.
I mean, shit, that kind of like lays into maybe the last thing I know we wanted to talk about is just, how to handle, we talked about it earlier this episode, but how to handle burnout and like real life and when to step away from the computer and when to have that dirty martini and all that type of stuff. I mean, it's important during the bear, like everyone preaches, stick with it. And I'm all for that, but consuming it 24/7, like there will be a time where you should hop on your computer and be on it a little more, but this is probably the time where you can maybe be on it a little less. And I know the meme is touch grass, but like get outside and do something else and take the time to better yourself or be productive. Cause like stewing in the negativity that's on Twitter right now is just not healthy.
No. And how do you draw that line? Like, where do you decide now is the time? And I think it's something that only you can decide.
Yeah. I mean, it's so tough, right? Like it's so tough to walk away from the scene, and this is the job, right? So it's an everyday thing, but the like when the DeFi is popping, when all the mints are popping, you're on your computer at all hours, but maybe you set like a more strict like log off time per se, even though this is like a 24/7 industry.
Yeah. And I think what's different about it too is, I never put my email on my phone. I will not have my email on my phone.
Yeah, no, I never do that. Twitter, though, Twitter's what gets me.
Yeah, Twitter's on there. So you're never really away from it.
Right. It's always like, okay, let me scroll Twitter. And Twitter's the type of thing where you can refresh. Boom. There's like 30 new takes.
Right. And that damn refresh noise, the little bird whistle.
Oh, I know.
I love it.
Did you just add that, by the way?
I don't know. My phone's almost always on silent. So I heard it for the first time a few weeks ago, and I just started like pulling it down constantly. Like, let me hit that again.
Right.
But that feeds into it. Like, you can't escape a lot of what we're doing sometimes unless you physically remove the app.
Yeah, exactly. And like, again, there are so many, nothing's going to happen overnight right now. We're not going to get some crazy bid where we just go up only. And I hope me saying this on air means that like that's what happens, but nothing like that normally happens. So you're not missing out. And like, shit, if you need to catch up, just tune into Trending Down.
Yeah, like it's honestly a good thing because you're not going to hear this doomer negativity that's going to bring your day down. Like you're going to hear some hopefully realism and some takes that are founded in logic and not some bias.
Right, right. And I think, it's tough to, again, even with the podcast, it's tough to do it every single week right now because there's just not a ton going on. And when something happens, it's kind of like negative,
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, we'll work in IRL subjects, like, what's your favorite drink, that type of stuff. And like, I think that's funny and gives people an outlet. And the fact that that was like so talked about on the last episode kind of shows me people are looking for like a little distraction from all the negativity right now.
Yeah. Like you said, it's not healthy. Like it sucks. Like do this, go play an online video game, competitive video game and hear how negative the team gets when you're winning and just think about how happy you are in that game. You're not. You're annoyed. You're mad. Right. Like when you're losing and that team is like joking around and having fun, like you don't really care that you're losing because you're laughing at some like debauchery that's going on. The outcome is still the same. You still lose that game, but you had a lot more fun along the way.
Right.
And we've lost that on the timeline. And that's, I think, burning a lot of people out.
Correct. I mean, like going back to your point of a video game, like I know so many people, you hop on the sticks and you want to have a good time and then you start raging because you're not winning your ranked matches or whatever it is. It's like the same thing here. Like that can apply where you wake up for the day, you're ready to kill it. And then like you hop on Twitter and it's all of a sudden, or Discord even, like of the projects you follow. And it's just, oh my God, it's so doom and gloom out there.
Yeah. So, how do you manage that? I think is the big thing we're trying to figure out here. And it's like, it's self-custody of your own feelings. Like the first thing you have to do is just be able to admit when you're not okay. Like I sent you, like full disclosure, I sent you a message like 4 days ago. It's like, hey, not having a great day. Just can't do the podcast tonight. Let's push it.
Right.
And like, that's just a big part of personal growth is being able to say like, hey, I can't do this right now. And that's okay.
Yeah. Being able to say no, and realizing like, maybe I need a mental health moment right now. Just to kind of clear the head and go on a walk. I mean, if you don't work out, like go on a walk or something, when some of the Twitter timeline gets to you and like, maybe you're listening to this and or maybe you stop listening because you don't care, but like, it gets to everyone. Let's be real here.
Oh yeah. It was something we were very aware of, at one of the companies I worked at, because it was a startup and we worked like 50, 60-hour weeks and it was nonsense. But we had this thing called the digital blackout starting Friday at 5 p.m. where you were not on your computer, you were not on Slack, you were not reading emails until Monday at 9 a.m. It didn't matter what was happening. And that helped a lot of people survive that crazy environment. It was a little different for engineers that had to be on call and, you're 2 days into your digital blackout and you're suddenly getting paged at 4 a.m. But it helps. Like you have to balance, and no one can balance in crypto because everyone's saying, oh, well, this minted Saturday at noon and it did a 10x and I missed that. So I got to be paying attention on the weekends too. And they just get stuck in that cycle of I can never leave. Right.
And again, like there will be a time where that comes back. But right now, ain't it. Like, there's no mints even happening, I feel like.
No. But even when that time comes back, like, who cares?
Yeah, you can miss one. I mean, the opportunities are endless when it's that era.
Yeah, the amount of time I spent on my computer just looking through Twitter and Discord and Telegram in the bull market, but doing nothing and gaining nothing is shocking.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
like, I always thought about that.
It's
you
so
can
tough.
Optimize.
That's a good point because you'll be on your computer thinking you have to be a ton during the bull market, and then maybe you didn't have to be. So like finding that line now it's tough because when you do find that project or whatever that you spent a couple extra hours on your computer for and you found it, that's when it's like it compounds the issue.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It reinforces the behavior. Let's just say that.
It's hard. It's hard to figure it out because.
Yep.
Perfect example is a week ago, GMX from 38 to 62. I put in a clip at 38 and then I get a DM from you and I think Bao that
Yeah.
GX is at $62 and it was like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And I was
not up for
awake.
that. I wish I was.
I was, but my phone goes on like do not disturb at midnight
Yeah.
and I didn't see it. And it's easy to look back at that and be like, man, I could have had a huge profit line if I was just paying attention more.
Yep.
But who gives a shit, man? Like, there's always another pitch to swing at. You don't need to swing at every pitch.
Correct. There's always another pitch or another at bat for that matter if you get struck out.
Yeah, I've been struck out so many damn times. I've been rugged more times than I can count.
I mean, it's all about the comeback.
Yeah, my buddy I saw this weekend, actually, he asked me, he goes, how much money have you lost?
Oh my God, dude.
And I was like, enough that I don't want to think about it.
I mean, that is the whole pain of like going back and doing taxes and all that stuff. You're just like, not even, it's almost like what's worse, losing the cash or the mistakes of like selling early. Like, I feel like selling early hurts more.
Yeah, because at that time, it's like, it's a different kind of disappointment in yourself. It's not like I
Right.
played this wrong or I did something wrong. It's that I missed out on so much more money.
Yeah. Yeah.
The funny part about taxes, though, is like halfway through, you've coped with the concept of I've lost all this money, and you're like, ooh, another deduction. Okay, here we go. This brings the income down a little bit.
Know. You're all of a sudden like loving those losses.
Yeah, it's how you frame them, right?
Yeah.
You lose $2,000 on a trade, and you're like, okay, well, that's $2,000 less income. We get
Yep.
a little less taxes. Okay, here we
We'll
go.
take that. I mean, like, yeah. It's wild. It's wild. The mindset of being full time in crypto, and maybe you're not full time, and that's probably for the best, mental health wise.
Yeah, it's the house always wins is the
Yeah.
easiest way to put it, and you win by being here longer and not here brighter. Like the
Right.
flame always burns bright versus burning long. You want it to burn long.
Right. I mean,
So
time in the market over time in the market. It's just,
Right.
it's plain and simple. And that's just how it's been.
Like I think there's a reason KSI disappears every bear market.
Right.
It just bounces. He's just gone.
Well, for
And then-
him, like, think about how much stuff that guy has going on. So yeah, he's not going to dedicate the time. He's going to come back when it's easy mode.
Yeah, but it just gives him so much more, so much less stress. He's not
Right.
sitting here weathering through the storms. He's saying, all right, see you guys later when it's sunny again. And just bounces, doesn't think twice about it.
Yep. Yep.
And that's like the extreme version of that burnout protection.
Right. Exactly. I think there is definitely a middle ground, especially because that's what we do. But there's the middle ground there of like, hey, okay, cool. The bid's not here. Let's research daily. Let's still do all the routine stuff, but maybe take a couple hours off of the normal schedule.
It's just, I played a lot of video games growing up as a child, had a lot of free time and alone time. And the easiest thing for me was noticing that I'm getting frustrated at what I'm doing. It's time for me to stop for a little bit. So when I'm reading the timeline, I'm getting like annoyed with takes or like getting mad about like some concept or some bad actors. I just kind of step away.
Right.
And I think that's like my biggest way I've been able to balance things because I historically do not balance things well. I'm an all-in kind of person. But focusing that and noticing that, hey, this is not, it's not working, I guess. It's just frustrating me. Like, why am I still doing this?
Yeah.
Take some hours off, take the day off.
And then you come back refreshed and you probably come back with a better mindset, to be honest. So
Yeah, there's a reason huge tech companies offer a sabbatical. When you are trying to quit and you're important to your company, the first thing they hit you with is take some time off.
right.
And it's because it works.
Exactly.
So
and that's the takeaway right there is that it does work and you should try it.
yeah.
Otherwise, especially, and then take that into the bull run too. Like this is the time to work on the toolkit, like we've been talking about this whole episode, and that's one of them. Time management.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And that's something that anyone can do better. I can do that better.
Oh, you can always get better. I mean, if you think that you've perfected something, there's probably room to improve.
Yeah, absolutely.
With anything in life, really. But now we're just on the soapbox. So, I mean, shit, did we have anything else we wanted to go over? Was that a quality episode back? I mean, I don't know what we're going to call the title because the last one was the return and all of a sudden, every episode, like we back, the return. Back again.
We're practicing burnout prevention.
Exactly.
Which is funny because this is like one of the more fun parts of my week.
I know.
So this is actively the burnout protection here.
I agree. No, but we'll be back on a normal schedule here, and hit us up with Twitter topics. We'll get that on the next one. I'm sure some crazy stuff will go down because we got some macro events coming up over the next couple days. So,
actually, one of the things that I think got us to do this sooner was people tweeting at us and being like, "Hey, we need an episode. The market's going down.
Exactly.
We need you to pump us back up."
Exactly. No, that helps a ton. Anyone who wants to say anything on Twitter and stuff like that, we love reading it. So hit us up with suggestions, topics you guys want us to talk about. Hit us with those IRL topics too, because if you don't know what IRL means, in real life. So, but yeah.
Those are my favorite ones, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. We want to talk about stuff that, especially right now, like when the bull comes back, we're probably going to have too much to talk about. So let's just get a little personal here and there.
Just for the statistics out there, we're up $5 since we started recording.
I mean, dude, if I max long it at 30x, that's $150 at least.
Ooh, that's half of a PS5 to come play with your boy.
Exactly. Oh my God. But yeah, honestly, great to get back on the mic. Again, hit us with the topics and we'll bring it to you. We'll bring it to your headphones. So. Yeah. Another ep in the book, 14 down, and of infinity more to go.
Never stopping, baby.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you probably a week from now.
See you later.
Peace.